again, everybody. Welcome to Can't Wait, Sounds Terrible. That's Patrick. That's Eleni. Producer Grace is back there doing her producer thing, making sense of this mess. And I can't, it's almost like we read the zeitgeist of our country and our city and our state when we came up with the name for this pod. And it sounds terrible, it looks terrible, and producer Grace makes it look better and sound incrementally better. So I don't know, where do we begin? There's been so much news flooding from Chicago politics and Chicago media, and I don't even know where to start. And Springfield, and it's also State of the Union Week in the United Snakes capital in Washington, D.C. I think it's safe to say that the state of the union of this podcast is shaky. So we're going to we're trying to radical candor for our constituents on that score. Patrick, this is just queuing up some low-hanging fruit for you. The Chicago Sun-Times reported that the city of Chicago hiked prices this year for some business license fees by as much as 400%. And this is according to the city's Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. So fees are going up. For example, a charter sightseeing vehicle increased to $1,000 from $500. Some advocates contend higher business license fees are yet another example of small businesses facing economic headwinds in our fair city. As the former chamber geek, always a chamber geek, former a paid chamber geek, what are your thoughts?
As you and I have toured the South, there are not a lot of doing business fees applicable to businesses in the southern part of America. And it would seem those are where a lot of the businesses seem to be moving. So it is remarkable in some regard to just the continued belief of nickel and diming folks just into oblivion. And I know Eleni is going to talk about our 26% property tax increase, but squashing small businesses, fees, all the like. Why is anyone going to hit their head against the wall and start a business in Chicago? It's there's no certainty here on a number of fronts, from the state of the state to this maneuver. If you'd make a long-term commitment in Illinois, it's like next year, thanks for doing that. Here's an increase in taxes and fees. It's just, we're circling an absurdity here, and it doesn't really balance the budget.
Lenny, I'm hoping that Dino's Pizza gets grandfathered into some lower fee level.
Yeah, I think they would force themselves. To get grandfathered in. But first of all, I would say is a 50+% increase in my property taxes, just for the record. And in case anybody forgot, there is a primary in a couple weeks for some of the folks that take care of that fee or assessment for me. So think about that when you're voting in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, the governor had his budget address last week, and I think it was for somebody who we all believe is going to be running for president. He hit all of the right marks. But once again, it's, we always had this joke when I worked in legislature, like, don't forget, the governor's budget address is a wish list. It's the wish list. And it'll be interesting to see where it all lands at the end of session, because we all know that from this address to May 30th, we're not going to hear about anything really, other than some probably like strict policy debate issues that we will have from now until the end of session. But until then, just from the state perspective, yeah, no one's going to want to pay for themselves, especially right now, in the next couple of weeks before we get to this primary where people are trying to squeak by.
Well, I know you like to focus your anger at the Cook County assessor, who is someone that has been a polarizing county official, I think is safe to say.
Mhm.
Met him once or twice. He's a nice enough bloke, but certainly associated with these painful bills that you've been getting in the mail. But I would point out that a lot of this is not in his control, in that it's all these tax raisers at Chicago Public Schools and at the City Hall and the county building and mosquito abatement district. What do you think about all that, Eleni?
Well, yes and no. I think I don't disagree with what his cause is. I think there was a lot of wrongs that needed to be right from his predecessor. Okay, but I think there may have been a little bit more strategy put into how that got done. That's specifically for me. But I would say it's it's a difficult office to be in, and I think again strategy is everything. So I think we would like to see more of that from him if he remains the assessor, and also from whoever is running against him. I think it was Pat Hines is his opponent. So, and I believe Pat is a longtime uh, employee or worked in the assessor's office for many years. So that's always, I think, a good sign that you have somebody who understands the office and is not necessarily the political climber that we see jumping from office to office, or candidate or candidacy to candidacy. And for disclosure,
Well,
I know Pat Hines, so just in case anyone needs to know that.
well, we wish them all the best of luck on their primary election. Speaking of charges and counter charges, I can't even summarize it. Maybe Eleni, you can do this for us, or maybe we just have to just say that there's a lot of stuff going on. But negative ads are out, and
Oh,
then there's negative counter ads that are out. Especially, I guess the highest profile is in the United States Senate race for the Democratic nomination to run for the United States Senate to succeed longtime senior senator Dick Durbin, primarily between Raja Krishnamurthy, who certainly has the most money and in some polls has the lead, and our Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. Can you edify the viewers at all, Eleni, as to what's going on there?
I mean, I can tell you, I can edify it by giving you the example of a tweet I saw by Ben Bradley, WGN's Ben Bradley, that said seeing the latest Juliana ad, that we've come a long way from when they go low, we go high. Because in the latest ad, I believe that Juliana's I don't know if it was her campaign or the PAC that's supporting her, uh, had the F word in it. And so I think we're getting into silly season right now, right? This is like the last ditch effort we're seeing, just not even in that race, but in other races, like everyone's just throwing everything out there. And so I think, I hate to say it, but like it's going to get worse in these last few weeks. I mean, it's going to be brutal, and I think everyone's right now assessing, okay, well, what message is going to work? What's the Hail Marys now for teams that sorry, for the campaigns that are, looking in hot water. They're like, what are we throwing at the wall now? Like, just put it out there. This is our last ditch effort. Put it out there. And so, I mean, I've seen some other oppo for some other offices that is now just circulating out there that normally you wouldn't see. But hey, like, people are desperate to win, and you're just going to see a lot worse coming out.
You called it teams, and that's actually probably a good slip. It is a little reminiscent of the Olympic gold hockey match between the USA and Canada, and people's teeth are getting knocked out and checked into the boards. It's getting pretty physical. And at the congressional level, it is and there's so many candidates vying for mostly Democratic nominations for a number of the seats that are opened up, sort of a rare year. And one of the things that some of the candidates are crying foul over is super PACs representing pro Israel causes and pro crypto causes are weighing in on these, what has normally been sort of a hyper local kind of race. Like we've always been, like everything in Chicago, kind of provincial about our congressional races. Whereas, in DC, they view these things much differently. Somehow we've been able to keep all of those folks at bay. But this year, the big super PACs, Patrick, are coming in and they are weighing in against some candidates and trying to help some others.
That's right. And I think we can play the tape in a couple months. I think we can add to this list that the THC infused cannabis beverage industry will be standing up super PACs to help move candidates over the finish line come November because their business is about to be regulated out of existence. So I think we're going to see a lot of these groups. I wouldn't be surprised to see the prediction markets also step in here because the money's flowing quite so well. But I think as practitioners of public affairs and politics, we see the somewhat absurd hilarity here, which is there's almost no difference in the policy decisions between many of these people on the ballot. They're going to vote the same way. They're going to obstruct the Trump administration tooth and nail. They're not going to be a vote, and yet we see the Hail Mary, to use Eleni's phrase, is let's try and convince Democrat voters that somehow there's a MAGA loving Democrat in sheep's clothing wandering around trying to see your or get your vote. So it's silly season. It's interesting, but it's just going to continue to ramp up, as is the case when there's not a lot of difference between the candidates on the issues. It's personality and delivery, and maybe the choice of their clothing or sports teams affiliations. There's really no other reason to vote one way or the other.
The Israel issue is among the most divisive, as it has since the Israeli Hamas war broke out after the horrible terrorist attack by Hamas. And the American Israel Public Affairs Committee is involved in 4 of the congressional contests. They are supporting Laura Fine, who is currently a state senator, former Congresswoman Melissa Bean, who's trying to retake her former seat, Melissa Conyers-Ervin, interestingly, Chicago City Treasurer, I found that interesting, and Cook County Commissioner Donna Miller, who is running in the 2nd congressional district. And the folks who are sort of getting targeted by this PAC are objecting. The tensions have gotten to the point that another 7th district candidate, one of Conyers-Ervin's opponents, Anthony Driver, returned a campaign donation from an AIPAC supporter and Democrat political mega donor, Michael Sachs. And Mr. Sachs had a statement saying it is truly sad there is so much anti-Israel sentiment and outright Jew hate that Anthony found himself in this position. And he says, I can only hope the electorate rejects hate in all its forms. So pretty strong war of words by Mr. Sachs, who's normally a power player behind the scenes and behind the curtain. But Anthony Driver, I think, was able to elevate that contribution and get some free earned media, Eleni, and try to call attention to himself in what is a crowded race, in a crowded field, in a distracting time.
Yeah, like I said, like it's silly season and people are looking for anything to put out there that will differentiate them. Even, we had the joke of like no press is bad press. I mean, people are looking for attention. And with so many people running in some of these races, something like that, and then you get somebody to the level of Michael Sachs responding to you, hey, like he checked his box. And so we're going to see a lot more of this. There's no doubt about it in the next couple weeks.
I used to think in the Republican Party, right? Or I didn't used to think this, it was an observed differentiation in the primaries, the pro-life, pro-choice element. And I think the Democrats are going to find themselves on this particular issue, this question, it being very divisive in their primaries for a period of time because the polling is out and the base of the Democrat Party is not aligned writ large with kind of some of the mainstay other elements of the party, and it's just a generationally divisive issue there. And just like we saw the Republican Party get contorted in these primaries for years, if not decades, it wouldn't be surprising to see this play out through multiple cycles.
Well, there's a little bit more evidence that Michael Sachs's concerns are well placed, and I will explain. So, another media development in the past several days was Chicago Magazine came out with its 50 most powerful Chicagoans. So, first glaring omission, Eleni is not in there. Neither is Patrick, nor is producer Grace. Must be an oversight. Maybe they were 51, 2, 3, and 4. But some of the usual suspects are in there. A couple of clients who are business leaders. The great governor of the great state of Illinois. The owner of the Chicago Fire, Joe Mansueto, who's also a very successful business person. Michael Sachs, who is also the CEO and chair of Grosvenor, a financial business, and as we said, a Democrat mega donor. And right before him, coming in at number 7 in Chicago Magazine's top 50, Eleni, Nick Fuentes, white nationalist streamer. I actually did not know that he lives in Berwyn. I think that's appropriate. And although there's a good music and blues bar in Berwyn, or at least there used to be. I'll have to get back to you all on that. Mr. Fuentes is a pretty blatant anti-Semite. He has praised Adolf Hitler, who he described as really effing cool. And he's also a misogynist who says women shouldn't have the right to vote. The theory, I suppose, besides being a conversation starter for Chicago Magazine, so that you pick it up at your grocery counter, is that as a sign of the times, he is influential with the right wing, which is now in power in Washington. Eleni, how does that make you feel?
I can understand if we're looking at if we're rating people on influence, like if they're influencers, right? But in Chicago Magazine, in the state of Illinois, where the Republican Party is meaningless, putting him on this list, first off, is offensive just based on the stuff you just listed. He's an anti-Semite. He's saying women shouldn't vote. I mean, those are just the things we can pick off the top of our heads. So putting this guy in there is like criminal. And now we're gonna then just take it into the context of in Chicago Magazine, of all places. I saw there was a lot of negative react to that, as there should be. I don't know if heads are rolling at Chicago Magazine or what, but somebody needs to be held accountable for that, because that is, I mean, it is appalling to me. And, you know, I saw the list too. I opened it up, and the second I saw his name on that list, I didn't even bother looking through the rest of it, because I was like, this list means nothing now that this person's on there.
I think you so well described the shock and horror that I felt when I saw that. I thought I'd gotten hacked when I looked at this online, and then I double checked, in the magazine at our grocery check-in.
Yeah.
And, it's been a great place to find restaurants over the years, but Chicago Magazine should really be ashamed and embarrassed. And the
Yes.
legacy media is having a hard enough time
Yep.
being relevant with people. And this is where they think they're going to get some new subscriptions or new eyeballs. I hope that they fail miserably. Okay, so speaking of failing miserably, it's time for Sounds Terrible. What could be more terrible than that? Uh, let's let Eleni get some water, get some air from that very important speech. Patrick, why don't you start?
Well, my sounds terrible. I'm a follow up because I know our loyal viewers want to know the resolution of Prime Minister's questions in the state of potholes. Was keeping tabs on Keir Starmer, and yet again, a minister from his own party had to ask him, when are they going to fix the potholes? So it's silly season, it's election season, international affairs abound. People, you got to take care of the streets. Have fun with
And
the
now we know
motto.
how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall.
That's right. We got it. You gotta stay in touch with your constituents, people. And I will keep our loyal listeners apprised if more ministers are displeased with the status of road resurfacing in the United Kingdom. But they got enough problems over there. They should take care of these relatively easy ones with the
Maybe they
asphalt
could
truck
bury some of those Epstein files in some of those holes,
or just some
pave
of the
them over.
royal. Get them out shoveling the asphalt. I think that might be some chain gang like activities. Repair the roads.
Eleni, what else sounds terrible to you?
Going off of what we were just talking about, but like in a very serious, sounds terrible. Yesterday, WGN layoffs were announced, and I mean, I think the list is up to 8 or 9 folks that we know and work with and do a fantastic job covering what happens here in Illinois. It's devastating and frustrating to hear it. And, truly sounds terrible, especially when you have Chicago Magazine putting up, something like that. So just shout out to all our WGN folks, and truly sounds terrible.
Democracy dies in the darkness, as the publishers of the New York Times have said. My sounds terrible brings us back to America's pastime and our lovable Cubs. We hopefully are in this season. We've made some additions. We're going to be lovable winners, but we do have the lovable loser monkey on our back on occasion from, that 108 years of futility before the 2016 World Series. And the other day at spring training, and some of the folks on social media missed the nuance of this, as is often the case. It was the most spring training triple play of all time. So normally, I know Eleni is sporty spice, so she's way ahead of me on this. Normally, a double play, triple play, it's bang, bang, bang. Line drive, throw to second, throw to first. The runners are all out. But Major League Baseball writer Maria Guardado noted the weirdness of play that took place between the Cubs and the San Francisco Giants the other day. So it starts with emergency sirens going off at Scottsdale Stadium in the first inning. And it was caused by someone who started smoking in the bathroom. So number one, are we on the Northwest Side? Like, what the heck just happened? But I guess, there are some parts of Scottsdale that are reminiscent of some of Eleni's haunts. So smoking in the background started an alarm. That rattled the starting pitcher for the Giants. Fans started, rumbling around, moving around, thought they had to evacuate. But the ump said we have to keep going. So the Giants pitcher, Bobby Ray, walks the bases loaded. He's a little rattled. Then Cubs right fielder Seiya Suzuki gets up, and He gets a hit, but it's kind of one of those blooper hits out to right field. And the Giants' second baseman hustles out there to grab it on the bounce and throws it to home plate. But the pitcher sees that maybe there's a chance to get one of the other runners. He thought that Matt Shaw, who was on third, was going to score. That's a Cubs runner. So he throws the ball, he cuts it, and throws the ball to second. And they get Seiya Suzuki, who's now trying to turn this into an extra base hit, into a rundown. Or actually, they catch him trying to stretch a single into a double. So he's out at second. Meanwhile, Alex Bregman, our awesome new third baseman, is caught in a rundown between second and third. So they finally get him tagged out at third, because also standing on third is Matt Shaw. So as the one of the San Francisco players said, I don't even know what happened, said shortstop Willie Adames. I couldn't even look at it, but I know there were too many people at third base. There should be like maybe two guys there. There were three. So they tag Bregman, who's standing on third. And they also tag Matt Shaw, who is already comfortably and safely standing on third. The ump says out, referring to Bregman, who has now overrun and wound up in the same base as one of his teammates. And producer Grace has a little clip that she'll run on this so we can see this.
Over the years, one of the best in the game. Here's the pitch now. There's a fly ball into shallow right center field. That's going to fall beyond anybody for a base hit. And the Cubs have two runners at third. Here goes the throw to second. Now the runner slides in there. He's out. Now they got two runners at third. This is going to turn into a double play, or maybe even a triple play. Going over to third, there were two guys on base. And the backup runner who got tagged first is the guy who's going to be called out. And now the runner at third leaves the base, and he's going to be tagged out. It's a triple play to end the inning. Oh, wow.
At this point, this play has taken about 40 seconds. Normally, it takes about 3. So seeing that Bregman's called out and that the shortstop tagged him as well, Matt Shaw starts to walk towards the dugout. So the third baseman, Matt Chapman, grabs the ball and tags Shaw, completing the triple play. It almost required like an intermission. That triple play took so long. So it's the most spring training play you can have, the most spring training triple play. You don't want to be the recipient of a triple play. I hope that the Cubbies have got that out of their system. If not, this will be a terribleness that will live in infamy. We need to do better. Chicago Cubs, we're counting on you. We need you to. Let's get that out of our system. Anyway, if it's terrible, hopefully it's not the Cubs anymore, but it's definitely something we're going to talk about. We can't wait for it. Can't wait. Sounds terrible. That's Patrick. That's Eleni. That's producer Grace. We'll see you next time.